Senhoras e senhores, boa tarde. Pedimos a gentileza de ocuparem seus assentos. Dentro de instantes, daremos início às atividades na plenária. Senhoras e senhores, boa tarde. Pedimos a gentileza de ocuparem seus assentos. Dentro de instantes, daremos início às atividades na plenária.
Brazil is driving the future of clean mobility. A nation where innovation, sustainability, and energy diversity move together, turning ambition into action. Brazil leads with real solutions, already transforming transport and reducing emissions. Multiple decarbonization routes power our journey. From biofuels like ethanol, biodiesel, and biogas to hybrid and electric technologies. Each solution reflects our unique strengths, creating cleaner, smarter, and more inclusive mobility. The Brazilian automotive industry, represented by ANFAVEA, the Brazilian Association of Vehicle Manufacturers, stands united, investing, innovating, and building partnerships to move faster toward the low-carbon future. Together, we're not just following the transition. We're driving it. ANFAVEA, driving Brazil's decarbonization journey.
Boa tarde. Sejam todos muito
Good
bem-vindos.
afternoon. Welcome to Casa do Seguro, a strategic hub of strategy businesses created to promote the role of insurance in climate transition. My name is Leila Pontes, and this afternoon I'm honored to offer the Forum of the Automotive Industry and Insurance at COP30 by CNseg and ANFAVEA, the National Association of Motor Vehicles Manufacturers. The objective of the forum is to discuss the initiatives developed by the automotive industry for the decarbonization of the national fleet and how the insurance sector can be an ally in this process by developing products and solutions aligned with the modernization of industrial production. So all sessions have simultaneous translation and phones are available outside, so you can just get it before we start. The full program at COP30 can be seen at the site casadoseguro.org.br or through the QR code, which is being shown here. So the first panel of today, in this panel, we will check the goal of this panel to discuss the strategic role of the automotive industry in the transition to low carbon economy with a focus on technological innovation, new mobility models, and emission reduction strategies. In this panel, decarbonization of the automotive sector, we invited Roberto Braga, Vice Director of Toyota, Director of Communication and President of Fundação Toyota, Priscila Rocha, Sustainability Manager, Volkswagen and Trucks, João Irineu, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs from Stellantis, Gustavo Bonini, Institutional Director from Scania Latin America, Fábio Rua, Vice President for South America, General Motors, and a moderator, Henry Joseph Jr., Special Advisor to the Presidency, ANFAVEA. Henry, floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure that we see this house full of people who are following what we'll be showing here. I'd like to, first of all, thank people from CNseg, Diogo, Gustavo, for the invitation to this event, this forum of the automotive industry and insurance. Is an idea that started at the beginning of the year, and we are advancing in this partnership. And one of these moments is this panel here that we are doing now. So the panel has as its objectives bringing here 5 of our main associates of ANFAVEA that will give us a word on how they see decarbonization in the automotive sector. This is an important decarbonization, even though in Brazil it represents only 13% of the total emissions of greenhouse effect gases. But we, from the automotive sector, we understand that we should collaborate in a very emphatic way towards decarbonization, trying to reach the targets that Brazil has decided to reach in the following years. I will ask now our colleagues who are participating, each of them, to do a brief presentation, give us a few words about how their companies, their sectors, their areas understands decarbonization. So I'll start with Fabio from General Motors. Fabio, please. How is GM seeing that? Thank you, Henry. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations, CNseg, for this very beautiful house. I have been many places this week, and here is definitely the most impressive one with the best infrastructure. I'm really glad that we have set this partnership. Congratulations. I'm glad that we can share our views on decarbonization. And answering the questions, also greeting my colleagues. It's a pleasure to be near you. Decarbonization is the name of the game. I understand your point when you say that our emissions correspond to 13% of the total emissions in Brazil, but it is a good amount, a great amount, and we have to address this theme, not just because we impact the environment, and vehicles historically have done so. They are products which bring an important load of environmental impact, but because we are transforming quickly. I think we have already turned the key. One of the slogans presented here by Fabio some minutes ago is that we are driving the future of sustainable mobility. And I can say that is true. We have a view in our company which is accelerated in terms of decarbonization. We don't have specific targets like the COPs do, but we have a clear vision that we are working on that in that direction. And we have announced at the beginning of this year that until 2030, we will have all vehicles produced by GM in Brazil with some sort of electrification, hybrid vehicles, electrical. We announced that in this period, we will launch about 10 to 14 vehicles with this electrification characteristic. In December, it will get with a Christmas cake that we have here. We will produce the first 100% electrical vehicle in Brazil. It will be manufactured in Ceará. We identify there is market for that. It is an inaccessible vehicle, and others will come, and we keep being committed with this compromise. Last year, we announced that we will produce in Brazil the first flex hybrid cars here in Brazil and the first in the world. Other competitors from the industries, pioneers as well in this technology, have shown that this is a market that certainly is keen to the consumer. So I think it's important to see the example that we are giving to the world. The fact that it is going to be produced here in Brazil. Obviously, their success will mean the success of other markets as well. And last, it's important to say that decarbonization is in our productive process as well, that we carefully look at it. We have the target of reaching net zero in 2040. All plants in GM are geared towards the same. We are ahead of some of these targets. For example, when the fueling of our plants, it's done with renewable energy. We have a target of all our plants being supplied with renewable energy. We are just finalizing an adjustment in Gravataí, our plant in Gravataí, and this will be reached before what we had planned. the productive process as a whole, less use of water, 30% less water than we used to use in our manufacturing process, reuse, water of reuse, all the processes of using technologies that consume less energy is being implemented in the plants. We announced a cycle, the first phase of our cycle of 7 billion reais. In this first phase, the perspective is that we will renew all our machinery in the plants so that our production is more decarbonizing and efficient. I am really eager to see all this forward, and I reinforce our commitment with decarbonization. Thank you, Fábio. I think you managed it very quickly. We hope that everyone will have a second and a third opportunity to speak, but I think you gave us a very clear view that decarbonization is not just a product, also the process and everything that gravitates around the industrial process. I think this is very important. General Motors always talked about electrifying, even though it had been questioned. You said clearly that this will be done. You announced this product. This is one of the first times that we can hear that clearly, the sale of this electric product here in Brazil. Congratulations. You are light vehicle manufacturers, so I would like to hear a little bit about heavy vehicles from Bonini, from Scania in Brazil. So Bonini, what is Scania doing in that direction? Thank you for the question. Good afternoon. I hope you are all doing well and you're all healthy. It's an honor to be here with all these colleagues to talk about this important theme. I'd like to congratulate CNseg for the partnership that we are very glad to have. So when we talk about decarbonization, I'd like to bring some approaches here: technology, infrastructure, and public policies. And when we talk about technology, I have great news to give you. When we look at heavy vehicle sector, we have all the viable technologies for this decarbonization being commercialized and produced in Brazil. I like to throw some lights upon that because when you talk about sustainability, you have to talk about local production. There isn't sustainability without local production. And when we talk about heavy trucks and buses, biodiesel, where we see in our country, I'll connect that to public policies, the percentage of biodiesel which has been included in diesel. And we have technology here in Brazil for a vehicle which is 100 run on biodiesel. So this is really important for decarbonization, and it attends to the market that we have in Brazil. We are one of the biggest producer of soya in Brazil, so biodiesel production is really important, and green diesel is coming closer to us. The synergy of production between SAF and HVO. So it's important to remember the hardware that there are engines in the truck that can run on 100% biodiesel fuel. The biomethanol truck we produced in 2018, it's not a test, it's something that is happening. It's really important that has a synergy, absolute synergy with colleagues here from ethanol as well, because we have the production of biomethane. So you see the synergy that we have. I talked about the kerosene for aviation. We are talking about ethanol and biomethane. So it's a reference in our country. The biggest potential for the production of that is in Brazil. Whether this is springing from agribusiness or residue. Electrification is also very important. When we look at the electrical grid in Brazil, we see that it is 85% green. So Brazil is ahead when we consider decarbonizations. If we look at biofuels, We have our solutions. If we look at cars, we are not just removing the exhaust pipe from the truck to place it somewhere else. We are removing it from all the transport system. Infrastructure, yes, we lack on that. Only 12% of the federal roads in Brazil are paved. So when we think of trucks and the long distance, we see that there is a difficulty for electrification due to that. But this is mapped and it is increasing. So the great news is we have a mapping of what is necessary to be done to unlock the infrastructure issue. And this is something that we Brazilians have to do. And finally, public policy. I think with that, we can motivate decarbonization. Our country has given great steps in that direction. The question of moving the route 2030 and other projects in the automotive industry. There are many initiatives which are showing that it's not just car industries, but the society is demanding that. When we talk about transport, we are saying that clients of clients are demanding sustainability. No one will want to do business with you. We want to work with you, which is not sustainable, if you're not sustainable, and if you don't have decarbonization as your main purpose. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think you made it very clear that the path that's being followed, this sense of responsibility from the industry is very important. It was also clearly stated by General Motors and now by Scania. I think this movement of the company in that direction is fundamental for us to be able to advance. We heard light, we heard heavy vehicles, now light again. Okay, you see, we are intertwining here so that there's no fight here in this stage, onto the stage. So João Irineu from Grupo Stellantis groups that has many brands here in Brazil. How is Stellantis working and the challenge of decarbonization? How is it seen by your company? First of all, thank you, CNseg, for the space. Like I was saying, this is a very beautiful space. We have been going through the installations here, and here the space is really special, really very good. So congratulations on what you have done. I would like to also to greet the colleagues here onto the stage. It's always a pleasure to talk about the automotive sector, mainly when we have light and heavy vehicles. There are many things in common. The most important is decarbonization. Of course, I'll talk about light commercial vehicles. We have a very extensive portfolio. So this increases our responsibility because cars have different costs. The client can pay differently from the light vehicle to the premium one, and we have to fit decarbonization solutions that will fit the client's pocket. So this is a big challenge. We have to remember that safety, connectivity, we have a list of regulations to respect, but decarbonization is certainly the most challenging because it is a global problem that many times doesn't have a unique solution. So to our luck, Brazil, due to its energy matrix that has been mentioned here, has some differentials which place us, which give us conditions of doing a more balanced decarbonizations to do an energy transition which is well balanced. I was going to say this at the end, but I'll say it right at the beginning because I think this is different from the group that is here. The union between private and public sector allowed us along the past years. This discussion started in 2012, so we've been discussing for 10 years about that because the next regulation will start in 2017, but we started with Inovar, then in 2022, Rota, and Mover, which is going to start as of 2027 with limits of CO2 for the vehicles which are commercialized. We are talking about 12% reduction, 11%. There are 5 programs adding up 35% of reduction in 10 years. If we look through the planet, which was the emerging country that has managed to do 35% reduction, you will see that it will be difficult to find. And this was done in a developing country like us, because we have an energy matrix which is privileged. So we are trying to find regional solutions. And in this evolution, the MOVER, which has been recently published, it starts to introduce a concept which is important, which is from the cradle to the grave, the life cycle of the product. And our chain is a long chain. I think this has already been commented upon. It started in mining and it ends with the recycling of the car. So we have been looking at all that with a lot of care, because we go into sectors which are not our technological domain. We depend on mining, the manufacturing of raw material. So we have looked at that very carefully, trying to involve all partners from this chain so that we can design a decarbonization route until 2050 for us to be able to reach carbon net zero. With the current technological knowledge, the interpreters apologize, the audio has been splitting. We are waiting for it to return. In one way, compensate that. It is the natural capture of CO2, which costs less. So we approve the investment from 20 to be able to have this technology available from segment A, segment B, and also for light commercial. So this is a strategy to involve the whole technology in a way that it fits the client's pocket and work with technologies for CO2 capture so that we can be sustainable and capture carbon one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, João. So later on, we'll be back with you, João, and it would be nice if you could give a bit more examples about the different technologies that fit in your pocket, in the pocket of the customers, right? But I feel like it's clear regardless, and everybody else was quite clear on the involvement of the industry with the issue. And now we're going to be talking to another company from the sector of heavy machinery. We got Priscila. Priscila is the head of sustainability from the Volkswagen Buses and Trucks branch. And Priscila, we would like you to share with us the vision of what and how Volkswagen Trucks and Buses are doing to treat the decarbonization of heavy trucks, because we know it's not easy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me say hi to my colleagues. I'd like to thank Fabio for the invitation. Thank you, CNseg, for this amazing place that you put together in record time, I'm sure. But again, bringing forth the philosophy that the COP president has and has shown, which is the concept of a multirão, or in English would be a collective. We do things together. It's impossible to do it by ourselves, and that's why we're here, showing that truly is possible. I had the privilege of following COP's coverage. I follow COP for quite some time, ever since the Paris Agreement. And I must confess that I've never seen so many results and actions being shown like we had. We didn't even have a transport day. Now we have one, because we have the sector for solutions here, and our country, especially when we're talking about deforestation, and the Paris Agreement brings the agenda of deforestation reduction until 2030. And if we don't do that, the problems will go on. So we have been working hardly in that, and Volkswagen Trucks and Buses is not any different. We have a strategy based in the goal of developing sustainable transportation for everyone, especially having the decarbonization pillar, circularity working hand in hand with decarbonization, of course, and the just transition, because we cannot leave anyone behind during this transition period. Now, in regards to our operations, we have been working with the life cycle assessment, looking from the raw material, the operation, and then up into the product, which is responsible for 95% of all the emissions throughout its life cycle. In relation to the raw materials, we have all been seeking to work in reducing the carbon footprint in many different ways. This is a country that has a lot of natural capital, so we're looking for renewable materials within the vehicle's composition. We want to incorporate more and more the recyclable materials, especially metal, so we do not have all that extraction to be part of the chain of production again. And when we start the production, what we want to do is then reduce the use of fossil fuels by using thermal energy, by exchanging, substituting the natural gas with methane. We, on top of the 15% of diesel that we find, we are also adding an additional 10% of HVO for the trucks and buses leaving the factory with already 25% of renewable fuel in it. And of course, all the work that is put behind energy efficiency, modernization, because the energy, of course, is at the heart of decarbonization. Then, when we start talking about vehicles, we then have a technology that is very well mature. It's a technology that uses 100% of biofuel. Our trucks are prepared for that. We have customers that already use it because they produce it directly at the source. They produce it and then use it in the trucks. We have electrification as part of the agenda. Our project is having the first 100% national manufacturing truck in Brazil. The project was created in 2017 and the truck was finally released in 2020. So we have that truck being used with different trucks, with different clients using it to transport food and beverages. That is a truck that is also navigating through interstate highways. So we are increasing its load potential more and more. We are also been working as a country that has such a creative background in hybrid vehicles. We also have the hybrid prototype that is doing really well. So we know that we can combine the two embedded technologies. And we also know that we have a generation of biomethane with the carbon footprint that is very, very low directly from a landfill or biomass. And of course, a truck with the biogas, that is another technology that we bet a lot on. And not only on those, we also have many others being developed, because we can definitely not stop just there. We know that electrification is a very important journey, because you're ensuring that at the output, there's no mufflers, right? So the idea is to have the decarbonization, of course. But again, in our country, of continental proportions like Brazil is, we believe in this new range of technologies for every type of customers. It's the new tailor-made, right? That makes us every day think about creative ways to decarbonize together our entire chain. So I guess that's a little bit of what we've done. Thank you. Thank you, Priscila. I think, again, it was very clear from what Priscila said. The development of heavy transportation is not easy. It needs to be dealt very carefully, especially in terms of its decarbonization. We have very different scenarios from the urban heavy machinery, the long distance heavy machinery buses, so maybe later we can try to explore a little bit more about those differences of the different type of products. So now I would like to invite Roberto Brown to speak with us. Roberto Brown is the Director of Communication and President of Fundação Toyota, Toyota Foundation. Toyota is here, present at COP30 at a very intense year. So, Brown, how is Toyota? I know you guys are dealing with this for some time, but how are you right now with Toyota are positioning yourselves, and what are the main messages that Toyota has for COP30? So, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Flavia, for inviting me, for CNseg as well. I would like to congratulate all of you for the great facility that you put together. First time that we see something like this being built in our country for an event like this. And let me start with global warmth. I think we are feeling it, and we from Toyota, particularly because of the incident that we had with the factory at Porto Feliz. I don't know if you heard, we had very strong winds that ended up impacting the structure of our factory, and we couldn't produce engines in Brazil, and we haven't reactivated the operation. It will take us even a bit longer to do that. So we're feeling it. We're feeling this global warming. So we, more than anyone, know the importance of reducing the CO2 emissions urgently. And all of us here from the sector are intensely working. Rest assured that we are all working in new technologies, in new, more sustainable fuels. The thing is that it's hard to pick one technology that is able to fill all the demands for our customers everywhere. That's why our company has this wide array options, because we know that it's necessary to combine many different technological innovations for you to achieve the carbon emissions. In Brazil, because of us being a great ethanol producer and having a country that has a ethanol distribution network ready with its over 40,000 ethanol stations. So because of all of that, we see that Brazil is the place that we are betting the most to use automotive technologies combined with the use of biofuels in order to work towards decarbonization. And within that context, obviously Brazil has over 50 years of experience with this since Proálcool. We have 22 years with flex cars, hybrid cars, and most recently, the hybrid flex technology arrived in 2019. It's been 6 years from Toyota, which was a pioneer in it, which brought a solution that is very easy. You don't need to recharge it. It's sustainable. It reduces in up to 70% the CO2 emissions when you are comparing with a conventional vehicle that is fueled by gasoline. That was a solution that we adopted because of the great approval that we had from the market. We already have a second model in production, which was Corolla Cross. We have a third model, which is the Yaris Cross Hybrid Flex. Compact is going to be arriving very shortly in Brazil. And we have a fourth model that's going to be produced later in the future. This technology and adding all the sales, it's over 100,000 vehicles sold. And here for COP, we brought the technology to be tested by the delegations. We brought 70 vehicles so that people have the experience of the hybrid flex technology fueled with ethanol to be able to get this experience to their countries, back to their countries, to show what Brazil has in terms of combining new technologies and biofuels. We also brought 2 prototypes for new technologies. We brought a pickup with hybrid flex engine, and we brought a vehicle which is a pickup with biofuel. Here at COP, we released a study that was quite interesting and important to bring the message to other countries. We released what we call a fact sheet, which is basically a study that showcases the advantage of ethanol and the combination of ethanol and other biofuels to decarbonize, but also to generate jobs, income, social development of our country. It's important to take this message, the message of combining technology with biofuel, to other countries. Because if the solution is working, it's good for us, it will be important for other countries, especially the ones that are part of the global south that have very similar agricultural, soil, and incomes to Brazil. So they could also make the decarbonization by using biofuels. That's a little bit of what I wanted to say. Thank you, Henri. Back to you. Thank you. Thank you. So we are all here saying very good things for the facility here, but we are feeling very cold here. Maybe the AC is turning really high, so we are probably the only people here in Belém who are actually feeling cold this afternoon. But regardless, Fabio, as you said, as you mentioned about the path ahead of General Motors, but I'll mention the things about different markets. So I wanted to hear from you, what's the vision that General Motors has in terms of market? Because a lot of the times we say that the Brazilian market by itself, it's not a market that is sufficiently big enough for bigger investments to bring new technologies, because it would demand a higher production so we could have a payback on those investments. On the other hand, like you're saying, you have new technologies coming in. So I wanted to understand, how is General Motors seeing this situation with the market, with the Brazilian, Latin American market, the export market? How is that being dealt with new technologies and new products, and also for amortization of the investments? Good question. So we understand that the Brazilian market was already established as the main market for manufacturing and exporting for Latin America and other 20 countries. We obviously have a lot of work to be done. We have the manufacturing capability of doing it. And it was mentioned before, I think it was during the press conference, the importance of us accelerating the policies and debating policies. We are very close of having an agreement, an important agreement that is being discussed for over 25 years, if I'm not mistaken, which is Mercosur and European Union, which might open some markets for us. And we also have agreements already working, agreements that need to be better studied, like the agreement between Brazil and Argentina. We had that scare throughout this year. In October of last year, Colombia had reported the bilateral agreement that it had with Brazil, and that would implicate that Brazil would need to pay an importation tariff of 18%, which would then diminish the competitiveness of our product, especially because Colombia is an open market. They have imports from China at zero tariffs and many other countries. And we, neighbors for Colombia, we have more difficulty to export our products from here to there. Thankfully, at the last moment, our president, our chancellor, understood the sense of urgency that we needed to this, and they were able to reach an agreement with Colombia. And Colombia had then agreed that our agreement was then postponed for another 12 months. And as long as that agreement is working, he will be renegotiated and new terms might be negotiated. But beyond those countries, we also have the possibility of straightening the bounds with Ecuador, with Chile, and other countries from the region. And that is going to make our strategy of electrification to gain more and more space in our region. Also, another thing that I wanted to bring here that is not a consensus among our colleagues, I know, but maybe it would be important for us to look at our industry with different set of eyes, different from what is seen right now. All the companies that are here today, they produce in Brazil. They have a high level of content, of local content. They employ thousands of people. They invest in R&D, and they need to be treated differently related to other participants of the industry that do not have that same level of commitment and robustness of nationalization of its products. And so if that's true, and if the government understands that that is true, and I think it does, because Mover goes alongside that, stimulating electrification, stimulating the investment in R&D in Brazil with more and more local content, we then understand that in order for us to have a market that is more dynamic and to bring more and more technologies for the country, we need to eventually have a vision that those who produce and invest here deeply should have a sort of quota to implement or complement their portfolio with new technologies. And that quota could maybe be used to guarantee that that market would then be and continue to be explored further for the companies that are more and more present here. And one last thing that I wanted to add here as food for thoughts, so we could maybe try to identify ways in order to expand our production and commercialization in Brazil and abroad, is the bilateral agreement of Brazil and Argentina. It has a mechanism called Flex that gives the possibility to you, while you're producing here and exporting to Argentina, Argentina can then produce there and export here with zero tariffs. And if you have a ratio of production among the two countries, you can then have a flow of trading that is free and allowed within these two countries. That flex is going to work until 2029, but there are companies who are producing only a single country and they use the flex in order to have that tax advantage. So to incentivize that flex to be respected at its core and orange. So those who produce here in this country and their country have the ability to have that exchange easily in the point of view of taxes. I believe that could incentivize more and more investments in the perspective of companies producing more and more in order to explore these other markets. Thank you, Fabio. I think you brought something else that was really important regarding the exporting market and the issues that needs to be seen both in the regulatory point of view and tax-wise in order to try to harmonize it further. So I understand that the vehicle export, the electric vehicle exports in itself has the thing that electricity works anywhere in the world, right? So might not be as clean as ours, but you will have an outlet to connect those vehicles anyhow. So the exportation of that has that dynamism of being easy to place that product, which is something that doesn't happen that often with different kind of technologies. So now I'd like to ask Gustavo from Scania to talk a bit more again related to the technologies that were mentioned before. Are those technologies that Scania understanding that has a potential for exportation, or are those technologies for the local market? And for exports, it's different. How do you see it? That's a great question, Henry. So the way we approach exports for markets is based in two pillars. First is the modularization, and secondly is the global production. In modularization, in order to make a Scania truck, we have over 3 million combinations. So it's something very specific. Therefore, we do not have vehicles in stock. That vehicle is almost tailor-made, custom-made. So you tell us how far the vehicle is going to go, how much weight it's going to bear. It's completely customized. We have a news piece a couple months ago who compared the assembly of a Scania truck with Lego, right? Because of all the many pieces and parts that go into it. And you have a global production. That is, all our factories around the world produces all the portfolio that we have. That's why that we have that in combination with modularization, we are able to attend to different regulations of their respective markets and different technologies. That allows us, for example, to have, like we have in our factory in São Bernardo do Campo, the potential to export that is quite high, not only with Latin America, but also exporting to Africa, Asia, Middle East, and even Europe, in which we have other factories. But during some emergencies, we can supply them. Just like Roberto Brown said, we can use our factory here to help an urgent necessity of the factory abroad. That helps because we had periods in which we exported 80% of what we produced. So, of course, there's a balance between producing and exporting because Brazil is the biggest market for Scania in the world. So all these technologies are present in other continents. So in Europe, for example, the gas truck have been growing and they've been using more. In Colombia, they have been using buses with gas. Diesel, of course, is a given, but Brazil, it's definitely more prominent in using gas, but we have vehicles with 100% of diesel in France. And electrification. Like you said, it's up to every single country with their own infrastructure. We can export this country and we can try to make it to be usable in many different countries under different circumstances. And here, I would like to follow what Fabio said, because I focus on technology a lot and how we can supply the market with that, but it's fundamental to work with FTAs, the free trade agreements. I'll give you a practical example. 5 years ago, Brazil didn't have a free trade agreement with Mexico for heavy trucks. So despite being the same continent and having good logistics, we were supplying the Mexican market with the factory from Switzerland because they had an agreement. And here to Mexico, Mexico needed to pay almost 50% of exports tax. So we had a work put together, even with the colleagues from Alfavia here, showcasing the importance of having a free trade agreement for the Brazilian government that advanced, moved forward, and now we can be competitive at that as well. We compete with other brands, but we compete with our other factors around the world as well, right? So we can use that public policy and the work that we put together between that agreement to try to advance in other exports, which is fundamental. Thank you so much, Bonini. João, if you could now changing a little bit the focus here. You mentioned about technologies, you mentioned about vehicles in order to supply different segments and the portfolio that you have, the big portfolio that you have at Stellantis demands the necessity of having products which work for different type of customers. So I wanted to understand what are some of the challenges that Stellantis has in terms of supplying parts and components to all those different technologies, to all that huge portfolio. I know that today that is important for companies in having new technologies and having supplies for that. So how is Stellantis dealing with that? That's a very important question because I think it connects to what was previously said. The main thing is defending the national automotive industry. Like we said, it's an extensive chain of production. We create a lot of jobs. So it involves different sectors, and we are facing an energy transition that is a global issue, of course, but we need to find a local solution. And the local solution goes through producing vehicles here. We create vehicles here that has a lot of embedded value. So if you want to maintain that, we need to bring electrification technologies here. When you're talking about electrification, regardless of its level, from the cheapest to the most expensive, we have lithium batteries, electric engine, inversors, converters. All of that is present. Different sizes, of course, because it depends on the size of electrification that you put it in the car, but they exist. So we need to develop the chain. Academy with the engineers with the required technical knowledge of the matter to work with that matter, using machinery and lines of production to produce those parts, raw materials as well. We have been discussing a lot about rare earths and critical materials in order to produce batteries and engines. So we need to verticalize the electrification in our country, and it all starts with the battery. We have lithium and lithium reserves and lithium mines here. We produce lithium and export it. So we need to get the lithium. We can continue to export it, but we need to keep a good quantity of lithium here to support the national market. It needs to be refined and produce the paste of the cathode and the anodes in order to produce the cell that are in the cars, that are in the phones, in the remote, stationary energy production facilities. So, we have everything we need to verticalize the chain and continue to generate wealth in the country, from mining up into the recycling of everything, including the battery. So, Harry, when we are looking at everything that we've done together, we can sell hybrid cars, we can sell electric cars, but we need to produce it here. And in order to do that, again, I think I gave an example before about innovating how to 2030 and Mover. 35% of reduction and for the next 10 years. What seemed impossible when you're starting to discuss this in 2012, and you were there, you remember, it became reality in 10 years. We're talking about 20, 30%, and in 10 years, we were able to reach 35%. We're going to reach 35% in 2027. I think we can get the supply chain for electric motors, batteries, and inverters localizing and gradually start, again, public and private sectors with the associations, with part of the same table discussing public policies in order to foster it. Thank you, João. I think that it was very and quite clear the challenges and the different aspects of it. I think that Brazil really has a lot of potential, which basically tells us that all the different journeys that we have ahead of us, it's not ephemeral, it's not going to last a short while. We have the potential of have that and growing quite a lot substantially on the up and coming years, without a doubt. So Priscila, going back to you in terms of the partnerships, Volkswagen buses and trucks is very well known for its modular process of production. But I wanted to understand how this Volkswagen trucks is dealing with the necessity of having partnerships or creating partnerships so that these new technologies are able to expand. And I'm asking that to you because I know that quite recently you had a partnership created for batteries with niobium. So I wanted you to explore a little bit further on that topic and brought us a bit more about information on how a sector, how a big company like Volkswagen Trucks work with this vision of having new partnerships in order to continue to grow. Please.
Thank you, Henry. I like when people ask me something similar to what you have just done. I like to go back 40 years in time just to explain what Volkswagen Trucks and Buses is. We have a German name, but the company is genuinely Brazilian, which is a company which started 40 years ago by buying another. And so after 10 years, they managed to build their own factory in Resende. And this factory became possible through partnership, which is the modular consortium. So within our operation, we have 7 companies bringing each part of the vehicle. And this concept started with Volkswagen Buses and Trucks in Resende, and up to nowadays, it's a partnership which is beyond the technical part. It goes through innovation, decarbonization, and people. If you have been to Volkswagen Trucks and Buses in Resende, you can't tell the difference of the 7 companies within the plants because everyone wears the same uniform. Here, there is a logo from the main company they work with, the same benefits, compliance, conduct code. This is partnership, and it's a partnership not just in business, it's a partnership with people. And this is what has taken us to this success story, which hasn't been different with electrical cars. When I mentioned the project that we had in 2017, we didn't have electric truck like the e-delivery. This was the first 11-ton truck, and then the 14-ton truck. We didn't see that kind of truck running in Brazil. So if you produce a truck that you don't see in the street, what happens with the after sales, all the parts, and so on? So in 2020, the consortium, the e-consortium started, and I have been with companies with technologies which are recognized worldwide bringing the settling of the battery cell in Brazil, the electrical access, the after sales, the supply of energy to be able to fill the tank, fill the battery. So you have all the maintenance of the vehicle, the operational cost is much lower to when you compare with a diesel vehicle. So this is how you recover the total cost of ownership. And once again, as we are genuinely Brazilian companies, with all my technological development in Resende, we needed extra resources at a accessible price. So we used a funding line from BNDES. We used a fund to develop vehicles, zero-emission vehicles, and this was one more enabler for us to be able to make it viable. And what has led this business that we have of working with disruptive issues, like the delivery, as initiators, as the pioneers, which is trust. The word is trust. Of course, to develop this vehicle, to be able to produce it, we had to have mutual trust and risk sharing among all the raw material chain, production, business, and the final client who said, I'll buy it, you produce it, we'll try to get to this price range and I will buy. So this trust goes from production to the end user, the client, who needs to help me make this wheel run. Otherwise, on our own, we can't do it. Thank you, Priscilla. It became very clear how much these partnerships are important. And you said, you mentioned Volkswagen trucks, but other companies know that partnerships are fundamental for this work. I would like to go back to Brown. Toyota has posted about the hybrid, brought Prius, and then there was a very big development, the expansion of this hybrid technology to other models, and then this the flex hybrid as well, and now we're bringing the hybrid showing the new model. I would like you to please bring us Toyota's view. This is a view that I understand is not just from Toyota Brazil. So how is Toyota, how does Toyota understand? What is the view about this need for products which are on the decarbonization line? Good question. The technologies are many, like I said at the beginning, and they have to be adapted to the context of the markets. Naturally, in some more developed countries, the solution of the electric car is a great solution. It depends on the use of the client. If it's for urban use or other uses, maybe it's a little more complex. You have the plug-in vehicle, you have the fuel cell vehicle, and vehicles which use sustainable fuels. From JAMA in the past, I think I talked a lot to Henry about that. JAMA, which is Anfavia in Japan, they had alerted already that electrification on its own wouldn't be enough for you to reach these decarbonization targets. You would have to add other things to that. What are these? It is to add other kinds of technologies, other kinds of biofuels. Why? Because biofuel has a decarbonization effect in the current fleet of the world, whether it is in the US or in an emerging country. When you do the mix of the biofuel, you are reducing emissions. So Brazil is a reference for that. We have great experience with that, and we have one of the highest mix of ethanol in gas, which is about 30%. India has done an exceptional work in the past few years with the support of Brazil, by sending parts, by even the federal government has been there, and they have done work in increasing the mix in a quick way. And in 10 years, they went from 1% of ethanol to 20% of ethanol. Now they have 400 gas stations. Brazil has 40,000. They have 400, but this shows that they want to go forward with this project. And in this past year, when I was in India's motor show, this year, they had 19 prototypes with flex fuel technology between motorcycle and cars. So this also shows the direction they are going to. A great point for us to advance with biofuel as an alternative solution for new vehicles and to work on our fleets is for you to have public policies which are the correct ones. And that's why we have received here in Brazil, it's not a secret, we have been getting many delegations from India, Thailand, Indonesia, Canada, Australia, to get to know the success case of Brazil. Brazil reached the point of where we are today. We are substituting 50% of the gas by ethanol here in our market. This is a unique case in the world. No one can do decarbonization with ethanol like we do here, but we reached that because besides having an extensive production for ethanol, all that has been an execution of plans from the agricultural industry, the ethanol production industry, the car development, flax, hybrid flax, all that happened because the public policies have supported that. The public policy supports the production and the sale of ethanol. They support the sale of vehicles with new technologies that reduce emissions. We have RenovaBio, we have future fuels. All these policies are being used as reference nowadays for other countries to be able to do their programs of gas emissions with biofuels. The Brazilian experience is a reference to the world. I think this is an interesting process that we are supporting with a lot of satisfaction. It is a Brazilian thing that is happening in many countries in the world. Thank you. Just reminding people that support doesn't mean subsidies. They are policies that we really give support. Our time is more than up, but I have to finish this panel by letting you have a final word. COP30, was it worth your while? Yes, it will be really worthwhile if the motto is followed to the risk, implementation, deployment. A lot of money has to go into these decarbonization processes, not just in our sectors. Governments have to work together, the market has to do that too. Education is a very important theme that has to be worked on. We have to motivate children to think about that. So our future depends on actions which are taken now. Criticism to us. We are good in terms of initiatives. We have to be good at finishing them up. So, put into practice. We need practical actions so that we can mitigate climate problems. You see how much investment on it, which is being done, but we have to talk about all the ecosystem. We have to make it happen. This is the expectation. I don't know if I am optimistic, but I can see this happening, that we had to accelerate this deployment so that we can solve this big problem in humanity. João Irineu, COP30. We commented here that we have a long chain. There are many sectors which are involved. We gave an example of what the private and public sectors can do when they get together to negotiate short, medium, long-term plans in favor of what's happening until 2030. In 2100, if we don't do anything, we'll have 44 degrees Celsius, so near the equator. So this region will become uninhabitable, and we won't be able to produce any food there. So we have to leave here with conclusions, with words, with ideas to put into practice. All the sectors, I gave an example here of innovate, use, and move, all have to be involved in this process and try to find objectives which are short, medium, long term, so that together we can do a sustainable walk towards 2050. Priscila. Well, every COP is worth our while. If it wouldn't be worthwhile, we wouldn't have seen concrete results which were published by IPCC and André Corrêa do Lago in one of his letters, that since the Paris Agreement, when the perspective for global warming, average global warming was more than 4 degrees until 2100, and nowadays, because of the actions that have been implemented since 2015, the prediction is 2.4. It's not where we want to be, but let's look at this glass thinking that it's half full, not just half empty. But we need to gain strength. And we have shown here that there is technology, there is mindset, there is willpower. Public policies are coming, the financial resources coming too. We need to know how to connect good projects to good resources with creativity so that this new era of clean energy can last and can be present in our country and in the world. Thank you, Priscila. Brown, COP30. Yes, it was certainly worth our while to show the world what we were doing best. Each of the cars that we lent to delegations had a tablet in which they could understand the technologies that we manufacture here in Brazil using biofuels, bringing this reduction potential for the emissions. And we could also listen here the commitment that Brazil made of increasing 4 times more the production of biofuel to be able to reduce emissions. We know that you can do that. We can produce. Brazil has a lot of degraded area that can be used to produce ethanol. What's missing today is higher demand. So who is going to increase production if you don't have a higher demand? So this is an important point, and it goes through the overcoming conflicts, for example, questions related to conflicts that we think exist. Once we overcome these issues, I'm sure that we are going to advance with biofuel, serving as a mix to everyone to reduce CO2. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who have been part of this panel today. During this past hour, I believe the idea here was to show how Anfávia and their associate companies are committed, and we are working in that sense, trying to decarbonize. Thank you very much. See you next time. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's have a picture taken now.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much. An excellent panel.
E agora que tal descobrir um
Now,
pouco
what
sobre a
about
experiência
discovering a little bit about the international
Vamos
experience?
descobrir já já.
We will do that soon. Okay.
Para nos contar um pouco
So
sobre a
tell us
experiência
a little
internacional
bit
em
about the international experience in decarbonization of the automotive sector. We are going to receive the Director of Green Finance from ILB Labs, João Paulo Sertão. João Paulo, welcome onto the stage. João Paulo Sertão.
Boa tarde.
Good
Boa tarde a todos e a
afternoon.
todas.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Primeiramente, eu
First of
gostaria de
all, I
falar
would
que eu
like
estou
to say
muito
that
satisfeito
I
de estar
am
aqui
really
hoje,
satisfied to be
presente
here
e apresentar para
today
vocês esse
to
estudo.
present to you this study.
Quando a gente
When
pensa
we
no setor
think
de
of
automotivo,
the
a gente
automotive
pensa
sector,
primeiramente na
we
fase
first
de
of all
utilização dos
think
veículos,
of the use of
que é toda a
vehicles,
etapa de
which is the phase
combustível,
of burning
primordialmente.
fuel.
Em segundo lugar, a
And
gente
then
pensa frequentemente
we
também
think
na parte da
frequently
construção do veículo.
about the building of
Mas
this
a gente
vehicle.
sabe que ao longo
But
da
we
vida
know that
de um
along the
automóvel,
life cycle
ele
of a
passa em média por
vehicle,
uma série de
it
ciclos.
goes through a
Cada um
number
desses
of
ciclos
claims, and each of these
desencadeia toda
claims
uma série de atividades
unchains a number of activities which
que a
issue
gente acredita
carbon.
fortemente
And we
que o
truly
setor de
believe
seguros,
that
ele
the
tem
insurance
um papel
sector has a role,
um papel ainda mais importante do
an
que já
even
teve
more
até agora
important role
na
that
parte
it
de
has had
nas
until
emissões
now
climáticas. Isso passa
in
não
climate
apenas
change. And
pelo
this
pela
doesn't go
oferecimento dos
only
produtos
through the offer
e
of products,
precificando o risco climático, entre outros,
versifying
mas
the
também
climate
na
risks,
estrutura da cadeia.
but also in
E
structuring
a
the chain.
apresentação de hoje trata
And the
exatamente
presentation
disso.
of today deals
Hoje a
exactly
gente vai
with
discutir
that.
um pouco sobre a
Today, we are going to
descarbonização
discuss a little
da
bit
cadeia
about the
de sinistros de
decarbonization
automóveis.
in the
Foi a
claim
partir
chain.
dessa constatação que
So
eu expliquei
this,
do fato de que uma
I
cada sinistro
explained that
desencadeia
for
uma série de atividades que
every
emite carbono.
claim, we have a number of activities that issue carbon, and this activity is little observed when we are talking about decarbonization. We decided to implement this study,
E ele foi feito
and
com
it
quatro
has been
parceiros.
done
O primeiro,
with 4
o
partners.
Agricola Assurance, que é
The
dos
first
maiores
one
seguradores do mercado francês.
was Agricola Insurance, the ABC
Que é uma empresa de perícia de
Expertise,
automóvel,
which is a
a maior do mercado
company
francês,
for
até onde
car
eu sei.
surveillance,
E
the
a
best
Europa
one in the
E
market, and
finalmente o Instituto
European
Ibachelier,
Stance,
que é
and
através do
the
departamento do ESG Lab,
Institute
que é o
Ibachelier,
departamento que eu coordeno.
which is
Eu
the
vou explicar um
department that
pouquinho
I
o
coordinate.
que é o Instituto
So,
Ibachelier.
CA
Eu
Assurance,
acho que
BCA
dentre
Expertise,
todos os
Europe
quatro
Assistance,
parceiros
and
é o que seria
ILB.
mais desconhecido, perdão. Mas eu só queria
But
enfatizar duas
I would
ideias
just like to
para
emphasize
discutir
2 ideas
esse estudo.
before I
A
start
primeira
discussing this
é
study.
que
The first
durante esse
one
estudo a
is
gente
that
reconhece
in this study, we
perfeitamente que a
recognize
descarbonização
that the
dos sinistros de automóveis
decarbonization of
constitui uma
auto
parte
claims
relativamente
constitutes
pequena
a
das
slow
emissões
part
do
of the
automóvel.
emissions of the
Porém,
sector,
como a gente vai ver,
but
com uma série de alavancas de
with a
descarbonização.
series of
E
decarbonization
a segunda ideia
leverages.
é que
And the
a gente
second
precisa
idea that I
enxergar
invite you to
isso
watch,
de
to see
perspectiva.
this study
Ele não
is
foi um estudo
with the
apenas
following
teórico,
perspective.
foi também
It
um
was not
estudo
just a
onde a gente
theoretical
discutiu
study. It was a
amplamente
study
com
where we
vários
discussed
atores de toda a
widely with
cadeia,
many players in
inclusive
this chain,
oficinas de reparo
experts,
e
garages,
diversos atores dessa cadeia,
a number of players
para poder
in the
chegar às
chain
conclusões
to
que a
be
gente
able
chegou.
to reach the conclusions which are presented here.
Antes de entrar também, só para
Before
um
I
ponto
go
importante,
into
cada
that,
desses
just
parceiros,
to
eles trouxeram
reinforce,
a sua
each of these
perspectiva e
partners
uma
brought their
dados
own
bem
expertises and
detalhados
also a
que permitiram a
database,
gente
which
extrair
was
dados
really detailed
suficientes quando
and which allowed us
validar as nossas conclusões
to
com
validate our
profissionais
conclusions, to analyze the data with the professionals from the sector.
contextualizar um pouquinho quem nós somos.
Just to
O Instituto
contextualize a little
Nós
bit
somos
about who we
instituto
are,
de
the
pesquisa
institute,
em
we are a
finanças e economia.
research
E
institute
a
in
gente faz
finance and
muita pesquisa na parte de sustentabilidade.
economics, and we research a lot on sustainability. The interpreters apologize. The financial sector might be a leverage. The interpreters apologize. The video and audio have stopped for a while. Okay, in our works, and it has more than 60 research programs of different sizes. We may reach up to 30 PhD students, and as you can see, we have the ILB Labs, which is the department that I manage, where I manage green finance. And our objective there is to develop robust methodologies and operational tools for our partners, who are usually insurance companies, banks, and investors, financial institutions. To get into the practice of what we do, first of all, the scope of our study. Our study has been concentrated in all the chain of car claims and all the emissions related to each of these phases, since the collision until the assistance, going through experts and then repair, or perhaps even the unsettling of the disassembling of the vehicle in case there is no way of repairing it. And talking a little bit about the scope. We only estimated in this study direct emissions. So the assistance, from the assistance to perhaps the disassembling of the vehicle. What we have not considered were the indirect emissions. For example, if a vehicle collides against a wall, when you repair the wall, there will be a number of emissions associated to that. But this has not been integrated. This is important to be mentioned right at the beginning, just for you to understand the scope of this work. Before I go into the results, just to explain very briefly the methodology that we used here, you have a mathematical representation, but basically for each phase of this process, we estimated an emission factor, reviewing the literature and the database that we had, and working with professionals from the sector. Once we determine the factors of emission for each phase, we then analyze the frequency for each phase on average in one claim in the French market. When we multiply the frequency by the emission factor, we reach the average rate of emission. And you will see that in a more concrete way. So here we are showing the global results. We have separated the claims by collisions, those who emit usually 146.4 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, and then the breakage of glasses, for example. Why? Because they are managed in different ways. That's why they were differentiated here. I'll concentrate today only on collision due to time constraints, but we will see each of these in detail, starting by assistance. This table is important because it is used in the next slides in all the phases. But going from left to right, in the first column, we have a host of emission. Each, the towing, the taxi that is used by the client, and also the replacement vehicle that the client is going to use when it is supplied by the assistance company. In the second column, we have frequency of operations per claim. The audio, unfortunately, is not being heard by the interpreters. That's why the interpretation has had to stop momentarily. Okay, so in assistance, the emissions are about 10.3 kilos in France. In terms of expertise, we made a difference when the expert has to go to the place and when the expert can do it online distantly. The emissions are almost zero in that case. But when the expert has to go to the place, Then we integrated the emissions associated to that route. And finally, the repair of vehicles. Here we have three great either the part that has suffered a collision is substituted by a new part, which is the first line, or the second one, a reconditioned part, or one part that has been second-hand, or it is repaired. And what we can see is that for this phase, we have 40 kilograms of carbon when you consider the 146. Then we have painting. Painting was a phase that has surprised us because we didn't expect it to represent such a big portion of the emissions. And this is explained for two reasons. First, the paint itself emits gases, and the second one is that the booth for drying the paint consumes a lot of energy, and it is used frequently with low efficiency, and it is as representative as the repair of the vehicle itself. And we can see here as well the replacement vehicle. When the vehicle is furnished by the company as a very important emission time in this process. I think we should spend 30 seconds looking at this, just for you to understand the difference when you choose to substitute a part that has suffered a collision by a brand new or a second-hand one. And when we repair, if we substitute and we compare, the interpreting booth unfortunately is not receiving the sound. When you compare the three, the new part, the circular cone part, and the repaired part, you can see the difference in emission, as can be seen in this chart. These are important evidences that we believe can be integrated in the process of deciding to repair parts of a vehicle. Now, getting to the most interesting part of the study, the leverages of decarbonization. One of the objectives of this study was to identify the potential for decarbonization, and we identified these four posts of emission here as highly emissive. The second column, we identified, we described, not identified, I'm sorry, the action. So, starting by the first one, something that seemed obvious to us in the substitution vehicle was to do an electrification of the fleet. This leverage is particularly significant in France because they have an electric mix, decarbonized electric mix due to nuclear energy, and we determined targets for each leverage level. So, with regards to the fleet, discussing with garages, we reached the conclusion that an electrification of 50% of the fleet would be ambitious but realistic, which led to a reduction in emissions of 11% biking. If we go to painting, the decarbonization lever type is very objective. It is basically about using the drying booth more efficiently. Discussing with garages, we have reached the conclusion that we can gain up to 40% in the consumption of energy of the painting stations, generating a reduction of 7%. And finally, in the choice of parts, what we saw in the previous slide, there would be two levers. The first one was to increase the repair parts rate, and when it is absolutely essential to repair, try to increase the circular economy part. When we get these lever effects, we reach a conclusion that it is doable nowadays without any extra technology, just by optimizing the process. That is a decarbonization of 22%, so we would gain 32 kilograms by claim on average in our study. We recognize as well there are some obstacles, mostly when we talk about repairing parts. The first factor will always be safety, safety first. But even integrating all these obstacles, we believe that these 22% are realistic. Before I conclude, I'd like to just bring in this extra slide because it materializes how far this work has reached beyond theory. So, like I said, it was used as a basis for discussion with players from all parts of the chain. We went to a reconditioning plant in France to understand if our numbers had an economic impact, a real one, if they made sense. This methodology, it is applied in the portfolio of Kitty Pensions. Every year they follow this number and for cars which have been manufactured in France and in other countries where they operate. And we did this work, which we have concluded recently with the Federation of France Experts. And this work had two main objectives. The first one was to try to do a framework for the report for the expertise in automotive industry in France. This helped them make this report, and it harmonizes the report. In Europe, you have a regulation issue as well. So this was one of the main objectives of this study. The second one was to develop an index, an indicator that would show the level of emission made by the choices that people make. What is the level of emission depending on that choice? And can they reduce these emissions associated to that repair? To that repair. So, the central point of the second objective is not to make carbon become a discussion, main discussion between the expert and the garage, but this is an indicator that is easy to read. We hope it is integrated into a software that will develop a report on the vehicle and that these emissions can be integrated into the discussion. The priority will always be security. The cost will always be a priority too, but having this emission reference in the discussion, we see it as a constructive measure. Just to conclude, I would like to leave you with some main ideas. Like I said at the beginning, with this study, we recognize that emissions, because of claims, they are smaller compared to all the other emissions of the automotive industry. But as we could see, there are a number of levers which are meaningful for the reduction of carbon. The second idea is that as we have done this study, we were more and more convinced, I was more and more convinced that this reduction cannot depend on one player. They depend on a collective and coordinated effort among all the stakeholders involved in the process. And third, and to conclude, this methodology was done in the French market. It was the market where we had data to do the study. We had easier access to the players in the chain, but it is replicable to other countries, to other jurisdictions. Of course, we have to adapt the factors, we have to adapt to the realities, but the methodology itself can be replicated. And my objective here was just to bring you these tools, show this study to you, present it to you, so that you know they exist. That's all that I came here to say. This is my conclusion. Due to the format of this presentation, I will not be able to answer questions now, but I'll be here until the end of the event and available to talk to you about that anytime. Thank you very much. Okay, from the claim to sustainability, savage and circular economy in the automotive sector. The goal of this panel is to explore the cooperation agenda between the two sectors, their areas of convergence, and their contributions to sustainable economic development. So I invite onto the stage Marlon Ottoni de Matos Teixeira, Auto Claims Manager from Allianz Seguros, João Irineu, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs from Stellantis, Daniel Morrone, Service Director from Renova Capi, Centro Automotivo Porto, André Vasco, Director of Services from CNseg, and soon Gilberto Martins, Director of Regulatory Affairs from Anfavia.
Boa tarde.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Vasco. I said that I wasn't going to talk about football, but I will have to, even though my name is Vasco. I support Flamengo. Malo, my friend, said, please don't play that trick, but it's important that people should know that. I would like to thank all of you for having come here. It's really important for CNseg, for Anfavia. It's a long partnership. We were together at COP29, and we had been exchanging experiences and seeing how this market can improve in a very positive way, how they work on the savaged ones. It doesn't end when we pay an indemnization. There is a continuity for the business and for society. How can we transform this savage as something that will not be discarded? So we understand that there are positive things to say, and that we would like to present to you a little. I'll start thanking my colleagues. As was informed by Lila, Gilberto will be here with us soon. He's a little late because he had another commitment, important commitment. Malo, can I start with you since you wanted to sit far away from me? Okay. So I brought a few questions which were important. And the first one I'm going to ask is, nowadays, the value is seen as a loss to be minimized. What are the paths that Allianz has walked on, let's say, to transform this? Okay, so first of all, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here representing Allianz. We are in more than we attend to more than millions of clients. So to have the claims area here is a great pleasure because we can materialize what has been done in this area to minimize the environmental impact. Nowadays, the claims area has a big focus on the management of residues, and we don't see the savage one as residue anymore. We see it as value. Allianz has a beneficiary association. So all recycling that is done from countries which are destined to be destroyed, all the value is geared towards this association and the economic value. Allianz invests in technology so that we can have the best price for that vehicle which is repairable, and we invest in technology and how we can commercialize salvaged cars better. So the salvage area is an area of opportunities, sustainable opportunities. We try to do that, to be able to make this business profitable for the company and for society. Thank you. Okay, we started talking about football, so I'll ask Daniel here. Daniel, you were commenting here that you're not from the insurance and you embarked in this sector. When we usually say this is like a mosquito bite that we have. So let's bring the experiences that you have. The insurance sector has a key role in the cycle of salvage. So how can it become a motor for the circular energy, reducing waste and reusing parts and material? Okay, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I thank CNseg for bringing me here to talk a little bit about Renova Ecopeças, which would be Renew Eco Parts. I come from the automotive industry, and I have recently joined Porto, and I am managing now Renew Eco Parts. Porto Seguro is divided in different parts. We have Porto Seguro, Porto Bank, Porto Health, and more recently, Porto Services. And this is where Renova Ecopeças is inserted. So we do car vehicle maintenance. Renova Ecopeças, it's important that it was started 12 years ago as one of the pioneers of recycling vehicles. So Porto Group has invested. 12 years ago, they invested on recycling vehicles that come from claims, and due to our volume, we are one of the biggest disassembler of Latin America. We have more than 30,000 vehicles recycled in the market and more than 1,000 parts. Every year, we learn how to include innovation. For example, the purchase of vehicles, we use AI to see what is the best vehicle that we can buy to disassemble. It's important to know that we don't buy vehicles only from Porto. We buy from assembly lines. It buys from other insurance companies. So the dismantling company can choose the car which can help us have also financial gains. But the main objective of Renova Ecopeças is to reduce informality, to bring more accessibility to the client, to original parts, and reinforce circular economy, which is what we are dealing with, and reinforce the ESG role of Grupo Porto. So you use artificial intelligence to purchase. You use a good pricing system for spare parts, for recycled spare parts. Sometimes we have to compete with this informal market. So if you don't have the correct pricing, this won't be possible. So robots help us analyze the conditions of the parts so that we can precify them. So we have the biggest stock of second-hand parts, a good purchase, a good precification, and an excellent dismantling process makes us efficient. Okay, now let's continue here, João. Let's call the jersey 10, doing an analogy with football. Oh, wow. Okay, so looking at Stellantis, João, you have acted globally with remanufacturing programs. What experiences that the company has in Europe and Latin America that could be done here in Brazil to reinforce sustainability after claims? I'll go one step back. We were in the previous panel discussing decarbonization and how to make it profitable and add value. So our chain is very extensive. Like I said before, the company, since 2021, when it was formed, we have been doing our forecast 2030, 2040, 2050 to decarbonize. It made a decision to evaluate decarbonization from the cradle to the grave, scopes 1, 2, and 3, and look at the full life cycle of a car, involving all the players that we have in the chain: mining, manufacturing, raw material, car components. A car of the medium segment has about 5,000 components. From these 5,000 components, steel represents more than 50% in terms of mass and weight. And then you have plastic, and then you have aluminum and others. All these materials, these three raw materials, are responsible for 90% of the emissions to manufacture the 5,000 pieces of the car. So these raw materials are really important in the productive system. So I have CO2 and I'm mining. When I'm mining iron ore, I have the emission of CO2, and I am manufacturing these parts, and the 5,000 components are out of the company. They have to be transported to the company for the car to be assembled. So look at the complexity of the chain. I'm trying to simplify it just so that it can be understood. Then the client buys this car, runs about 200,000 cars. You have the first, second, third owner, fourth owner, or even more owners, and then somehow it is discarded, many times in an informal way, sometimes formal, because it was apprehended or for many other reasons. And so, when we look at the full cycle, the company has looked through this line of this decarbonization and understood that we don't have known technology yet to be able to reach the zero emissions. And so the company has made some decisions. One of them was to invest in circular economy. We have a dismantling center, we receive the cars, we dismantle them, then we destine the raw material, which is steel, plastic, and aluminum, so we avoid new cars having to mine again, produce raw material again, produce CO2. So here's CO2 mitigation. Then adding value, because this raw material goes back to the chain, the sales of spare parts, second-hand parts, and remanufacturing of engines and transmitters. So it is an investment to generate value in a chain where we have to mitigate carbon. This work has started recently. We have a center there in Osasco, São Paulo, and we have a smaller volume than Porto, but we want to grow in this market and do partnerships as well, because the amount of cars, not just cars which have been through claims, cars which have been abandoned all over Brazil, we have to gather these cars and we have to transform all this scrap metal to be able to avoid CO2. This is the main idea of the project. Okay, now listening to the answer, it makes me reflect on the following. We have something very sustainable in our operation that generates some economy, that is generating a new market of parts, dismantling the car in a sustainable way, but we have to bring some sort of traceability, okay, Mark? So how can I do a standardization of traceability? And what is the opportunity that you see in the cycle of claims, mainly in terms of trust and reuse of these parts? Because, okay, bringing sustainability is important, but having trust in this process and to know that we are using a second-hand part that is traceable is super important. How do you How do you do that? Vasco, I'll use your name because it's a wonderful name. Vasco, it's also the name of our football team, mind you. And this is the most important because in a claims area, it's important for us to digitalize and trace. So it is a challenge for the insurance markets. This market needs to work together with the assembly lines. We were in Stellantis, and it is incredible. It makes us advance and have this direct contact for spare recycled parts. And we need to be able to generate trust to the client with reused second-hand parts. So that it can be traced back to where it was removed from and that it is valid. I think it is a pertinent point. Allianz has worked a lot in improving the digitalization of their products, so the claim journey from the moment the client opens a claim until the salvage, we have the traceability there, but we have the challenge when we buy parts which are second-hand, and we have to advance as a market and have scalability because it's a market that consumes many parts. At Allianz, we motivate the repairability of parts to reduce carbon emissions. From all pieces that can be repaired, we managed to repair more than 40%, but for 40%, we are still consuming new parts. I may have the product to use the piece of which is secondhand. So it is actually a challenge to have traceability and digitalization together, working with the governments as well, for them to be able to supervise them, offering the clients a part which is at lower cost that can be used to repair the vehicle, and we can have access to more parts. Thank you, Gilberto. Thank you for your presence here. Wonderful, Gilberto, that you managed it. I apologize, but I think I'll get here to the picture. We are all with a lot of appointments here, so thank you for having come and being here with us. Okay. Now, I think your subject is related to what I wanted to ask you. Okay, Gilberto, this circularity in the automotive system depends on norms and integrations. What regulatory advances and technical advances could accelerate the reuse of these parts as Marlon has placed, and materials in general here in Brazil? Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for waiting. I'm sorry I was a bit late. Well, we've had a great advance with the publication of Mover, which is a program for mobility. It has brought a change in targets. We had Inovar Alto, we had Route 30, and now we have Mover. This is a program that brings two new targets. The first one, recyclability, the second one, recycling. Recyclability, we are similar to European markets at the moment, that the weight of the material that is used in a car has to reach 85% at the end of the car's lifespan. So this is the target to be reused, sorry. This is the target that the manufacturer has to have in mind. Brazil has now a law, a dismantling law. I worked on that law for Contran. It had a focus on bringing in the dismantling companies to legality, so the sales of parts and dismantling in a legal way. And now Mover brings in sustainability. So creating a process which is correct about recycling, dismantling the vehicle in the correct way, reusing the parts, and then forward your raw material to the right destination so that it can be recycled, it can be reused in the automotive sector or perhaps in another sector. As most of the cars made of steel, this steel doesn't have to go back to the automotive sector. It can be used, for example, in building construction. So how do we do that? Move program will try to bring in traceability so that you can confirm that your vehicle was dismantled and the raw parts have come back to the market in a safe way. So the regulations of the program MOVE is what we are working on. We are working a lot on recycling, something totally new that Brazil hadn't developed so far. And of course, there will be remanufacturing. As a consequence of that, there will be more defined rules so that we can fulfill with the chain of recycling at the end of a car's lifespan. Thank you, Gilberto. So, Daniel, I will go back and give you a challenge, okay, Daniel? This is related to what Gilberto has just said. We have the challenge of hybrid electric cars. I can say that it's something new, not so new, but new to the insurance market, the automotive market. So how do we introduce these new models of vehicles within this process of recovering parts, dismantling cars in a sustainable way so that we can deliver something better to society? That's a good question. First, I would like to give you a context. When we talk about electric cars, it's important to see how the recycling subject is in Brazil at the moment. The recyclability of Brazil is about 2% of the fleet. When you go to more mature countries, you have 85 or 90% of the cars being recycled. So here you see an enormous opportunity for players. And even the plan MOVE, these only help us give more visibility so that we can absorb the potential that exists in Brazil. So when we start seeing more companies becoming an official dismantling company, following the law that started in São Paulo 11 years ago, this was like a lab to us in Renova. It's important to say that there is a context of the opportunity that we have in the market. And I'll go back a little bit to dismantle. Nowadays, we can place 85% of the car with parts in reusable parts that can be reinserted in the market. The other 15% is when we destine it as commodity, which is aluminum, steel, iron. When you go into an electric car, this changes because most of the car is its batteries. So within the cars in Renova, we are talking about 5,000 cars which will be recycled, and most of them are still combustion cars, but we are starting receiving electric cars. So what was the treatment that we gave to electric cars? We started to understand that the battery is an important source, and we are finding suppliers purchasers to buy the batteries, to repair other car batteries, or even energy feeders, let's say, which are used in this battery. But as the fleet is still very small, those cars which come to be recycled, they are on average 7 years old. So the quantity of electric cars will take a little longer to get to us. So from the 5,000 cars that we either bought from claims or which were donated to us, only 2% were hybrid or electric. The hybrids, just let's remember that the hybrids that has combustion engine, they have many other items which are accepted by the market. The battery part, we are developing suppliers that accept that will buy the battery as a commodity for other ends. So something that we have done is to try to find these purchasers, not suppliers, purchasers, to prepare our team technologically to know how to deal with this car, how to test the car, because all cars at Renova, they go through tests. The engines tested, the gears tested. How can we test the level of the battery of these cars? We are training people to learn that and following the legislation for dismantling, because this dismantling law is what will give traceability to cars. So every part that comes from Renova, they receive this stamp traceability. So this is really important at this moment, so that these parts will not go into the informal market. Thank you, thank you. Okay, João, I'll go back to you. Here there is a challenge for autonomous cars. Maybe it's a challenge for in a while, a short while, with regards to this advancing connectivity for autonomous cars, and this changes radically the relationship of people with the life cycle of vehicles. How do you see, how does Stellantis see this issue? And how does it tend to influence the business model in the maintenance and reuse of parts, as you commented in your answer, along the lifespan of a car and the relationship of a person with that car? Thank you for the question, Vasco. You see, Vasco is a football team. We are all Vasco supporters here, so we are saying this name out loud here all the time. Okay, then your question, let's contextualize it first. The categories of autonomous vehicle or the grades, there is a norm that separates and decides what is the degree of autonomy or functionality. Brazil is working towards having a legislation at the end of the year for light vehicles of certain characteristics of autonomous cars. Of course, the challenge is the environment where we take these cars. These are environments which many times, depending on the reading of the signpost, and here in South America, we don't have a standardized pattern. So you have to see the challenge that is ahead of us. So it's mandatory that we will have these functionalities, but new vehicles are connected in the cloud. So it is a cell phone on wheels. They are connected to the cloud, and they exchange data with intelligent city, with the service providers. The client buys from inside the car. They can pay the gas station from inside the car before they fill up the tank. These cars, when it is connected, like any other company that is connected, through risk situations. As the change of gear, the breaker, when a hacker invades the country, they can drive they can drive your car from your home. So we have to have many layers of protection to avoid that from happening. This car usually is loaded with technology. There are thousands of microprocessors in the car. We are talking about critical materials, certainly electrical engines. I think Daniel gave a good example about the battery. The battery in a car like that, which is connected, they have a high level of electrification, high voltage one. In a car that weighs 1,500 kilos, this battery weighs 500 kilos. So it's a third of the weight of the car. And within that, you have aluminum, you have many elements there. So the lithium battery has 7 kilos of lithium, and lithium is an important element in its functioning. So, okay, they have its second life. They lose capacity to store 1 or 2% a year. The car lasts 30 years. After this moment, they can't store energy for you to go through mid distances. And after that, we'll go into the discussion of recycling, and we have to remove raw material, this raw material, lithium, phosphatons, everything that was used to manufacture the battery. We have to remove that in order to avoid mining again. But the recycling of this process demands investment in factories to be able to remove that. You can recycle even 90% of the noble materials, but it will depend on scale, volume, like Daniel was saying. Electrification will grow. We have a forecast until 2030. 50% of our fleet will have some sort of electrification, light, medium, or high voltage. Certainly, companies will always analyze the market to be able to recycle the batteries. We'll have volumes in 5, 10 years, which will be significant, as we can see happening in other regions. So, in spite of having the mines, the reserve, we don't have a way to refine it. So we are on a scale of certainly have volumes in 5 to 10 years to start justifying a verticalization, including the recycling of batteries. Thank you, João.
Thank you, João. Now, Ricardo, another question for you. Now, thinking about Anfávia, part of the market, how do you see the role of integration between the manufacturers, insurance company, recycling company, in creating a new ecosystem? Maybe not a new ecosystem because that ecosystem already exists, but improving that ecosystem. How can that industry advance as it moves forward on the up and coming years? So we'll have to do that, right? Because now that we're here at a COP talking about decarbonization, there's something that the manufacturers know how to do, which is to improve the energy efficiency of a car. But decarbonization goes a bit beyond the energy efficiency of a car. We now need to look at the cycle as a whole. Fabio will be tomorrow presenting a study which we'll call From Start to Finish, which is basically starting in extracting raw material up to recycling. So all that chain, which you are saying that it needs to be more united, it needs to be more united because it's something that is going to start from beginning to end. So the manufacturers, the recyclers, the scrapyards are going to see how they work together so we can lower the carbon footprint of a vehicle. So within that study that Anfávia has had with Citigroup, we've seen that 1% of the emissions are belonging to recycling. So we need to get the know-how from the insurance companies, from the manufacturers, knowing that the vehicles are going to be projected towards recycling. We need to understand how you reduce the carbon footprint at the end of the life cycle. So integration needs to be complete with the insurance company, manufacturers, and also at the start of the production along the manufacturers and the component manufacturers and the raw materials extractors. So the cycle as a whole needs to be completed. Thank you. I think we have just a couple of minutes left. So, Marlon, considering everything that we spoke before, what would you like to leave as your final remarks, final comments on what is important about this market that is expanding in terms of recycling, dealing with claims, and how we take care of those parts? So the main thing that I see right now is that today the insurance market has more concern in terms of the salvaged material and the scraps. That is something that Allianz directs 100% of its vehicles to recycling companies that are certified, and we can have the traceability in terms of separating the components of the vehicle, like João has said. We can have a certification on what is and where it's being destined to. That is an aspect that we have evolved quite a lot in the scrap of the salvage car. But now the challenge for the insurance company is the part traceability in large scale. We need alongside the public power and the manufacturers to work together so we can have more safety in using reusing parts. Like I said, the market now works a lot in repairing parts that can be repaired, but when we need to replace it, it would be good if it could evolve and improve in terms of having a certification of that part so we can offer a product that is more competitive to the market and we gain more scale in terms of available parts for repairing vehicles. I think that's what's our message for the market. The market is evolving, but it could evolve even more, and the manufacturers are working towards that. Thank you. Thank you, Marlon. And Daniel, Porto already has its own recycling. It's been working with that for quite some time. So now looking ahead, what are the other opportunities that you see in order to improve this market even further? So in terms of contributing, I think one of the engines that is going to help us make the circular economy to grow even further, like you said, we're already doing that. We already absorb 40% of the claimed vehicles. So we can already acquire those vehicles and we can already disassemble them and reinsert those parts at the market. And then you can ask, so how can you buy all those vehicles and then do the reinsertion of those parts? Because I believe that the biggest engine is demand. If we have demand for consumers buying used parts with traceability, with quality, and with assurance, we can disassemble more and more cars. Because from what I understand, there's no lack of claimed cars or cars that have been abandoned that can be recycled. Today, the biggest bottleneck that I see for the future, because for the moment, all the initiatives, they're doing great and they're doing a good job in putting more people and making more people part of it. The biggest bottleneck is demand. And events like this, specialized news pieces, the press talking more and more about circular economy, we start awakening an interest of the end public and the repairers to want to acquire used parts. That is the little piece of the cog that is going to drive the entire chain forward. Because it's useless if we get a bunch of vehicles piling up in scrapyards and we are recycling a bunch of parts and are not using them. So that's what I said. What we need now is panels like this, disclosing and sharing information in places like COP, and telling people that purchasing recycled parts is good and it helps the environment. Thank you, Daniel. João, please, your final remarks. Like me, you work in the insurance market for so long. And by the way, I've been loving your answers, guys. You know, we want to keep adding value, like Daniel said about demand. That's important. And I kind of want to touch on two things that Daniel said. Daniel mentioned that 2 times already. He said that developed markets have programs of vehicular inspection. Vehicular inspections demands due to safety and sustainability for cars to have minimal requirements in order to be able to be driven. So there comes a time that such cars, especially older cars, are found in no longer safe conditions to be on the road. That car then is moved towards recycling. Maybe in some situations we could retrofit it by using those recycled parts. So the programs could help that demand to work. That's good for the environment and it's good for safety-wise. And for vehicle safety especially, if we look how much we spent in hospitals, in health insurances, in days now work because of accidents, and all the numbers are out there in terms of accidents. If we get all that data, we'll see that the business case comes back, right? So this study, this sensibility from the private and public sector, all together talking about a greater good, which is the common citizen, that it's living his life in the city, I think there will be financial return. So vehicular inspection, it's important. The business case in terms of health and traffic accidents, it's going to make that come true. It's a math that a lot of people are not doing it enough, but the data is there, it's available. We use that data to discuss inside Anfavia and all of that, because sometimes we spend more money inside a car, but it improves its safety, so it adds value to the society. So I think it's important to consider all that data to generate demand and make sure that it exists. So vehicular inspection, business case, and economic return in terms of health, employment, etc. Thank you. Gilberto, now, how do you see the future of everything here? What's the role of Anfavia here? I think the word is integration. We need to consider what João just said in terms of vehicle inspection, what Daniel said in terms of the batteries, and we need now to make sure we get all these ideas and we change it into a transforming project and how we're going to decarbonize the sector. So the main thing that I see here is that we integrated between ourselves, acquiring our own expertises and trying to change something that is good and also helps decarbonizing the country. We're able to decarbonize a part of it inside the vehicle. Now we need to do it in other ends, the beginning of the chain and the last part of the chain, which is the disassembly of the car. So we need to sit down, talk, discuss, change this program Mover into something that can be built upon on the future, so we are able to recycle much more than just 1 to 2% of the vehicles. There's definitely a lot of room to grow here. Perfect. Thank you. So, in the name of the CNseg, Casa do Seguro, I'd like to thank all of you for being with us today. Marlon, Daniel, Gilberto, João. I think this was a great debate, great panel that truly brings important information for the market, for the automobile market, for the insurance market, and also for the society as a whole. Like it was said, I have no question that we leave this panel with other things in mind, and we are sure that we do have opportunities in order to improve the sustainability of a business, and from that on, to create new business that generates more jobs, that generates more reused parts, and a better society. Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's take a picture together.
Muito bem. Obrigada, Vasco.
Thank you, Vasco.
O nosso próximo painel
So,
trata das
our
sinergias
next
entre
panel is going to
insurance
discuss
e
the
setor.
synergies between the insurance and automobile sectors. We're going to discuss how the treatment of salvaged cars can be a vector of innovation and sustainability, stimulating the circular economy in the automobile sector and strengthening practices of reusage, recycling, and reductions of environmental impact. To kickstart the panel, I would like to invite to the stage Keila Farias Rocha, Superintendent of Products Auto from Tokyo Marini. Welcome, Keila. Ivane Benazzi, Superintendent of Sustainability from Bradesco Seguros. Gustavo Bonini, Institutional Director of Scania Latin America. Andrea Saha, Tax Director and Director of External Affairs from Anfavia, and Renata Agostini, Director of Communication from Anfavia. All right, there he is. We wanted you here as well. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Renata, Director for Communication at Anfavia, and we are about to start the panel that's going to talk how the two sectors connect and can work better in partnerships, the sector for insurance and automobile. The idea is to explore this agenda and find the cooperation areas among the sectors, the differences, the contributions as well towards the sustainable economic development. We're going to try to answer some questions like what are the priority investments in terms of technology and innovation that now improve practices that support the climate transition. There are more questions, but we'll go by parts because I'm sure they have a lot to tell us. So let me start. We'll have two rounds of questions, okay? Let's start with Kayla Farias from Tokyo Marine. So, Kayla, what are the investments in technology and innovation that you see today can perfect the practices that support climate transition? Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to be here to talk about insurances and auto insurance. The market of insurances is ongoing a transformation. We, as consumers, are more and more demanding and more digitals, and that shows how much we're looking for innovative products. Now, if we assess the market today, sustainable products is something that is one of the information and one of the preferences of our consumers. This makes that the search for profitable solutions and solutions that have a social appeal, especially the conscious use of natural resources, is something that is discussed a lot. The insurance companies are more concerned and more worried about this climatic scenario, especially when a fast-paced support and looking to the population, which is so important because we have so many severe climate events happening. All of that stimulates the market to have faster processes. Artificial intelligence technology also backs it up quite a lot. If we look at a market that requires agility and is more concerned in having digital solutions, we have chatbots, fast electronic support. Tokyo Marine is trying to have supports in which when you need and you ask for a AAA service, it's something that is done quickly, fast, without wasting any time. That's a reality within Tokyo. We look at how AI in claim processes, where we have AI ready to, through pictures, assessing damages and assessing which kind of parts are involved within, and having an entire ecosystem integrated between workshops, customer support, solutions, and what was hired. All of that speeds up the process quite a lot, especially when you have moments when we have big climate disasters that are happening, that are a reality in the country. All of that makes the insurance companies constantly on her feet. Through assessing what is going on, we can send our employees to these places preemptively. We can support them better and try to speed the process overall. Now, in terms of reusing parts, that is a commitment of everyone here. In a way that we can preserve the raw material that we have today more. Now, in terms of statistics, data, and AI, the AI helps us to have more information, to have more climate data, to have a better acceptance and precification of an insurance. The insurance market can have services, products that are customized with all that information. So I think that AI is something that helps the entire market, insurance market as a whole, in terms of customer service, fast-paced service, and good precification. Kayla just finished talking about AI. So I want you as well, Andrea, thinking about that, the future. When we think of sustainability in the automobile sector, we are not talking about electrification. That's part of it. We talk about the hybrid vehicles, the electric vehicles. Everything is part of that discussion agenda. But when you look at that impact that all of that can have in the insurance sector, what can be said for the consequence of that increase? Because we don't know the percentage of electrified in the next 10 years. We just know it's going to grow, increase. So, what's the consequence? And do you see ways of mitigating that consequence and think of the synergies between the two sectors? Thank you, Renata. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to my colleagues here at the panel. Let me start by saying something that is also a little bit connected to what Kayla just mentioned. I believe that both sectors, automobile thinking the chain as a whole and the insurance sector, will need to know how to deal with these new technologies in the sense of reusage, especially in the cases like Kayla mentioned, when you have an occurrence like a type of claim and salvaged. And how do we do that? Today, we need to know how to learn with these new technologies, already thinking of the recycling steps and reusage of raw material and reducing costs. And artificial intelligence and technology can help us improve and create a traceability because it gives us a right origin for the part and for the raw material. That is an important data because the same parts and the same raw material can be back to the market, be as in being reutilization of the part in itself, or the transformation of that becoming a raw material of origin again. So the safety that we have, we translators apologize, we cannot hear the speaker. So what we can create in parallel markets in dubious origin, which ends up creating an elevated cost and an additional cost for the entire chain, including what was said for the insurance. Insurance is a very important portion and is quite significant, especially when you're thinking in terms of mobility of the country as a whole. The insurance is part of different phases, be it production-wise or transportation-wise. So when we trace this matrix, thinking in terms of salvaged in claims versus salvaged, the topic of technology and traceability minimizing risk is definitely an important convergence point between the two sectors. Wonderful. Thank you. Let me invite now Ivani to our conversation. Bonini, I'll get to you, okay? But I want to start with the girls. I'll leave you to close the first round, okay? So let's go back to Ivani. Ivani, regarding recycling, we know that Bradesco Seguros has a project called Oficina Sustentável or Sustainable Workshop. It has destined 100 some 1,000 tons to recycling. So I want you to tell me through the experience of a project like that, to tell us how do you see the evolving role of insurance companies in that sense in facilitating circular economy? Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here representing Bradesco Seguros. We see this place as a great opportunity to talk about so important sectors, the insurance sector and the automobile sector, especially in terms of sustainability. So far, we talked about transformation and process of mobility, thinking from the perspective of energy matrix, which is important because I see the automobile sector having its importance. But when we talk about mobility, we can also think of this entire production chain and using the infrastructure, how we dispose of it. And this project that we have had for quite some time brings and gives us a lot of expertise that goes alongside what Andrea just said. That is, if the sector evolves in working together, it can help all of us to reduce costs and then create a path that is very positive for everyone. So just to talk to you a bit more, give you more context about our sustainable workshops, when you think about economia circular or circular economy, this has been an agenda that is very natural for the insurance sector because we have that place, that conditioning, doing in working with those processes relating to the life cycle of a vehicle, from production to claims, thinking about the two sectors here, we realize that the insurance companies do have a strategic position in order to participate in the circular economy and to incentivize more sustainable practices. From our workshops, we can incentivize our vendors and suppliers. I apologize, the sound cut from her microphone. So we have two projects to talk to you about here. One is the Oficina Sustentável, or Sustainable Workshop, which has 23 workshops. So it's quite a well certified, and we are amplifying the project in the entire country. Bradesco Seguros is a company that is spread out throughout the country. So it's good because we ended up influencing other partners around Brazil and around this chain to be part with us. We have partners here in Belém, in other cities of the Northeast, and the rest of the country. So we help to influence other partners throughout the chain, not only on the southeast part of Brazil, but also other parts in which we have more access to it. And we were able to connect the repair system and transporting systems and ecosystem. Even recently, I went to get some data to show you. And from 2022, in this Sustainable Workshops project, we were able to get 300 tons of materials that were correctly disposed of from the beginning of the project regarding automotive residues. Beside the Sustainable Workshop project, we also have, since 2009, another pioneering project that has a more broadening impact in Brazil, and it's that project that we want to explain more and more. That is the project of destining parts of damaged vehicles that were involved in accidents and donating parts to certified recycling companies. And Bradesco Seguros shares and enables an online system that you can all copy and share with us, because it's important when it has things like that in the entire country, that is going to help the recyclable economy if we work together. And we have a collection logistics, which makes that the materials that are reappropriated and reused in the wrong manner can be discarded properly so we do not impact the environment. And this initiative, which has started in 2009, has already recycled 27,000 tons. I also wanted to tell you that besides involving and having this environmental project, we also help with social projects by helping garbage pickers, collectors. So we have social empowering projects in many places. And the circular economy also brings this empowering action for people and organizations. So we contribute not only for the environment, but also socially. When you look at countries in Europe, all of that is taken care of through a social point of view. But Brazil can bring that and get that to social development in using that in different regions. That would give us even more economic development. So we see circular economy advancing more and more with the integration with the automobile industry and bringing the environmental development, but also social development to different regions. Wonderful. Thank you. Now, last but not least, we do have you, Gustavo Bonini. Finally, I wanted to hear from you last because I wanted you to give us an idea and a vision that is a bit different from what we have discussing so far. Scania has quite of a robust place for digital services in terms of its fleet, telemetries, that is working with vehicles connected. So I wanted you to tell us, what do you see in terms of the usage that insurance can have for those data and the data alongside the manufacturers? What kind of synergies do we have in terms of possibilities in face of all these technologies that you are putting in your vehicles? Thank you, Renata, for adding me here, including me to the debate. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're all good. I'd like to say hi to my colleagues here in the panel and once again to thank Casa do Seguro for this debate. This is a panel that is talking about partnership after all, right? And partnership is the new leadership. So if you want to lead a change in the system towards more sustainable, we need partners to accelerate decarbonization. And the way we see decarbonization in Scania involves three pillars. One of those pillars is smart transport and connectivity. So it's three pillars: energy efficiency, the usage of renewable fuels and electrification, and smart transportation and connectivity. So in terms of energy efficiency, it's also important to highlight that this is a subject that has its place, but it's not a lot yet totally discussed when you talk about decarbonization. When you mention decarbonization, people always think about the best fuel, the best technology available. They compare electrification with fuels, but they forget to talk about energy efficiency. And that is important because let's imagine, actually 2 years ago, we have released a new product line that were 8% more economic. What does that mean? 8% more efficiency, 8% less CO2. Let me give you another example. Imagine if we develop a truck that with 1 liter, it would drive 1,000,000 kilometers. Doesn't matter if it's fossil fuel, you're still using it way, way less. So it's fundamental to include energy efficiency for vehicles. It could be an electric vehicle, a biodiesel vehicle, or whatever. The second pillar is something that we have debated in the past panel, which is the usage of biofuel in electrification, biofuel in its 100% biodiesel form, biomethane, like I say, the ethanol is for cars as biomethane is for trucks, and electrification that in our country is green because we have a greener grid. And then we have the pillar of connection. That's where we see a relation to insurance, which is smart transportation and connectivity. When we talk about loads transportation and freight transport, like a truck, planning that transportation needs to be done smart. It's not just about going from A to B. It has a lot of logistic planning behind it, which the transporting companies already have a lot of expertise with it, obviously. But then we have something that you mentioned, the telemetry of all that equipment. Today, the truck not only has its own usage diagnostics, bringing the predictability of all the regular maintenances and corrective maintenances, it also uses geolocation. And geolocation is pretty much the biggest synergy in terms of insurance because it's going to tell you, knowing the route, knowing the place that it needs to go, the urgency of the cargo, what's the best moment for a truck to stop at a given time, spend the less time possible stopped, because we don't want trucks to be stopped at the road, so we need to know how to do it the best possible way, exchanging it for maintenance or for switching drivers. Maintenance is important because you use it differently for different things. If you can be using a truck for mining, for riding on the highways. When you buy a truck from Scania, we don't give you a time for you to go get maintenance. It depends on how you're doing it. And geolocation is something that could be done in partnership with insurance companies in order for us to use it for the best. The use of geofences, knowing where the vehicle is, what's the best moment in order to do its job, and also to think about the safety of that cargo. Sometimes you need to change routes. How do you do that? So all those trucks already leave the factory connected. Of course, it depends on the client to purchase these features, but it's available. It can be used with the shippers, with the customers' customers, and with the insurance companies. Wonderful. I knew he would do a great job of finishing the panel, and he did. So let's go to the second round of questions now. And Kayla, in the first round of questions, I asked Andrea to look at this scenario that suggests an increase in electrification of the fleet and tell us what she sees in terms of the consequence of that and potential synergies between the two sectors that could help both sectors in the future. So I asked for the automotive industry to talk about that regarding insurance, and I want you from insurance to share us your idea with the automotive industry. We pretty much know that electrification will grow more and more. So in face of all of that, what can the two sectors do and support each other in that path? What do you think, Andrea? Is it going to be something like a fact check here, or we'll have convergencies? I think that just like Gustavo said, it's a partnership. I think everything is new, everything is for the common good. There are no convergencies. We are pretty much all of us seeking solutions for everything that is happening in terms of new releases and necessities, thinking about the end user. We are all here thinking about the end user. And this partnership is real. It exists. It's a common concern. So, in that sense, Kayla, what kind of improvements do you think the automotive sector could deliver? It could be in terms of infrastructure, it could be in terms of maintenance, that for the insurance sector would make sense in the path towards electrification. So hybrid and electric vehicles are occupying more and more space in the market. So we are starting to see that that has to do with sustainability. Of course, the consumer likes new technologies, and that is important. So in terms of insurance, we always think that is the insurance going to accept it? How do you precify it? And Tokyo Marine is completely ready to make insurances to be accepted for these changes in terms of embedded technologies and types of fuel. And it's quite simple, like we say, like Gustavo talking about partnerships. We simply need to know, are there needed to be new parts in the vehicle because of the fuels? How do we repair that? Is there a different type of assistance to it? So this type of new partnerships and in exchange of information makes so that Tokyo Marine can map this type of vehicles, the necessity that it has, and then have a more assertive persification. Because to persify it has to do in how the vehicle is going to be used, has to do with where this vehicle is riding on and the characteristics of the car. So a hybrid and electric vehicle, for example, is already a reality. The sustainable aspect of it is already happening. There are a lot of things to be dealt around it. Also, we cannot say that everything has been solved. There are still things to be discussed. And the insurance market is already 100% ready. Now, in terms of risks and claims, seems to have so many new vehicles being launched and new technology being launched, theft takes longer to happen. there's a less rate in it will happen, but it's compensated in terms of repairs in parts all the way until the market adjusts itself. So, and everything is quite constant. So we, as Tokyo Marine, we are ready for the new technologies, ready for the new fields, and we believe in this market. Andrea, now I wanted to listen for you. Kayla already mentioned some of the convergency, so I wanted to hear from you something that we haven't talked about yet, which is the vision from the public power. So you have several challenges for both sectors, both the insurance sector and the automotive sector. And how does the public sector, the public policies and its regulations can help them in this journey or maybe even get in their way? I think that's a very good question because that brings a very good topic for the panel. And before I answer that, I think it's important to mention and clarify how much information is important for everything that we are discussing. So, like the example Bonini just gave us in terms of the behavior of the trucks, and that information not only brings the information from the vehicle, but also on the behavior of the driver. And all that information adds a lot of value under the perspective of the insurance company. And if that information adds more value to the insurance company, and the insurance companies can even reduce costs by identifying different moments of better efficiency, that helps everyone. And with that being said, we also think that information under the sense of regulation and public policies also brings more safety for the process as a whole. So I think that in terms of regulation, it's important to think of that not only now, but in the future to continue to talk about it. So let's get an example, even from other panels that was discussed previously, in relation to other programs and public policies, like the program called Mover, which is already dealing with recycling. And let us bring this to the context of this panel, a panel that is talking about how to deal with vehicles and parts during a process of claims, keeping a higher rate of efficiency in salvaged materials, in traceability, in reusage of the parts, and using those parts maybe, or actually in getting those parts back to its raw material and measure the behavior of the truck or the driver. So you have a traceability that is related to the environment as well in which you are investing to. So all of that together brings synergies, partnerships that will then therefore add value to the discussion as a whole. The regulation allows you to know where you are and also what type of regulatory framework you want to strive to. And it also gives you the possibility of you having an environment that is transparent. And again, when you have a transparent process, that you know where you are, where you want to go, all these partnerships is regulated, the environment is certified, you minimize risks, therefore you gain more efficiency, and it's easier to continue business and balance all of this issue that we have been discussing in terms of impact here at COP30. Now, Ivani, in terms of collaborations and synergies between the two sectors, I wanted you now to give us your point of view on how this collaboration can accelerate the constructions of more sustainable businesses. You know, I think we already had a lot of positive examples. We're definitely walking towards that convergence. I think that throughout this COP that is done here in Brazil, we are definitely seeking more development, seeking sustainability in the sense of a sustainable development. We are facing two very complex chains, but with the energy and power potential, which has become quite clear throughout the panel, makes us that when we look at the insurance scenario, we get to customers, transporters. We are pretty much the bridge that get the services to everyone. And when we look at the automotive industry, we are basically looking for those who produce, that have access to technology, that are producing. So when you look at both universes getting together and joining forces, I think we all have a lot to win. And in the face of all of this, we have something concrete already happening. We have a work group in this confederation, and Casa do Seguro is leading it. That's the reason we're here together with Alfavia. It's a work group that has CNseg, CNseg, and Alfavia, all of them together with the insurance companies. That is going to allow us to discuss these themes and how to evolve, how to have good traceability for parts and residues, the reusage of salvaged components, reversed logistics, and also the management of batteries and electrified components. So what's the perfect world that we think as of in terms of sustainability? The perfect world would be us having electric and hybrid vehicles having its life cycle controlled, organized, optimized, us looking at the residual value. They have a time of maturing, and we have the time as well, like Tokyo said, to deal with all of that for us to have enough time to have the regulations to deal with everything. Nobody can do anything alone. That's why we need to be together, get together, and do something. So when you talk about innovation in terms of sustainability, what is the perfect world? Well, we have an ecosystem that has the traced component, certified residues, traceability, and the certifications of the operations. That's pretty much what we dream for the market. So you can continue to live as people and leave a good legacy for society and also to generate businesses. I think here we're talking about a agenda of opportunities and competitiveness. That's what is going to foster this environment for those that are here. So by us seeking sectorial synergies, we're going to be integrating the automobile sector and the insurance sector. And by doing that, we're going to leave legacy behind. And in the context of COP30, the legacy is about showing that decarbonization and circularity, which was what was most discussed previously as in clean energy, will not only be related to goals and regulations, but we can also bring prosperity and innovation to all of us. That's the greatest legacy from both sectors. So we are betting in the dialogue. That's the way. Now, Gustavo, we are talking about changes in the fleet as a whole. And when we look at the sector of transportation, we see the use of biomethane, we see the usage of electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. So clearly, the risk matrix is also changing, especially when we're talking about road transportation. In that sense, what's the role of the insurances in this new context? That's an excellent question. Let me say two things. One is will be more related to a paradigm shift, and another thing related to what the public sector should do as a stimulus to decarbonization. So in terms of paradigms, every time that I'm attending an event that talks about biomethane and gas, usually people ask about the risk of using gas. It's more dangerous, right? So a truck with a huge tank is a liability. So, I see a lot of people on their smartphones. So don't use it more now because I'm talking, but later look for Scania crash test gas. Again, Scania crash test gas. Look for that because we had a crash test in a simulation that it was very unlikely to happen, which was a truck to crash only the lateral part of it and hitting only the fuel tank at high speeds, completely loaded. And because of the truck is built, nothing happens to the tank. So this is just to remind you that we have been doing that for decades. Sweden has been doing that since the 70s. We never had an accident because of that, in which resulted the tank exploding and all of that. Scania and the panel doesn't recommend the usage, right? Right. It's a crash test. It's controlled in a lab. We recommend that authorized people that needs to do the test. So that's related to the paradigm shift. We need to understand that technologies are evolving and products wouldn't be released to the market if they weren't safe to be released. So that's important to mention. Another thing is the stimulus. We see how the public policies are important, how the government needs to contribute in terms of discount with tolls, taxes, with the stimulus that we have. Like Mover was said before, the project, investment in R&D, ROI, but it's important also the investment of private sector towards sustainability. Inside our company, we have this Scania bank that is subsidized in order to promote inside this financing, inside this fund to finance clean energies. And we hope that insurance companies are also working in mitigation on how offering a better solution for their clients. So I think the efforts, our effort, a little bit of effort for all of us here, from the manufacturers, for the insurance companies and the transporting companies, makes mobility and everything work towards decarbonization. Thank you. Ivani, I think I just noticed that Ivani wants to add something. We have one last round of final comment. So Ivani, you can start the last round, please. No, yeah, I just wanted to add something from the point of view of insurance companies. I mentioned about the conversation, and I see that as we start to direct our efforts in order to improve repairing, especially for trucks and agricultural machineries, in order for us to help maintain an adequate cost for insurance services. I think I already talked a lot about parts and circular economy because it's good for everyone. It's good for us. It's good for the automobile sector, for those who produces agriculture machinery, for those who produce equipment for vehicles and trucks, everyone. And when you talk about sustainability, it's good for the overall sector because we can reduce the cost of repairing so we can use the parts for longer, thus generating less residues in the environment. So better durability for the parts through repairing makes cheapen the cost with more safe equipment. And that assures that we have an environment that is more productive, assures that us have an insurance at a better price. So it's something that we need to work together. And I see that that is quite positive, especially look towards development in a country that is still developing like ours. And in face of such extreme climatic events that we experience right now in Brazil, we really need to do our part as automotive sector and also as insurance sector. So you can count on Bradesco Seguros to do that. And Andrea, if you want to go now, your final remarks, please. I think that all of us here are contributing, and we are creating a line of thinking here that is really interesting. First, in terms of investing in new technologies, that brings us more predictability in terms of behavior, the product, and all of that. of the environment as a whole, that by itself improves efficiency and predictability for the insurance companies. That from the moment in which we have a insurance claim, we could also have in the traceability to reduce costs to what concern using parts, reusing parts, and reducing costs in raw material by reusing the raw material. And to try to do all of that within a regulated environment. Because we have, at the end of the day, a partnership, and partnership is what is able to add value. So if we have that correlation, that combination, like we're doing here right now and talking about it, and we make it happen, I think we'll be safe for the future of investments. Kayla, please. So, Tokyo Marine is a Japanese company, and the sustainable culture is very strong in it. Tokyo Marine has as one of its pillars the concern for the future generations. That is something cultural. And Tokyo Marine Brazil could not be any different. For us, the subjects that we discuss and everything that's being said here at Casa do Seguro is of extreme importance for the insurance market, extreme importance for us to talk about this. I think there are many other opportunities here, a lot that can be shared. Casa do Seguro brings a union between all the parts that are here, and that is really important. Tokyo is concerned in bringing services and solutions and invest in new technologies, support new markets, and of course, looking at the customer's necessity. This moment right now, in which you have so many extreme climate events, which is awful for the society, these are the moments in which we can show our ability of what we can do. That we do not only need to work with the claims, we can work proactively. We can work with the contingency. We need to show the concern that we have on being ready for when something happens. Let's say we have forecasted that something would happen at a city. We can do that, but the size of what's going to happen, it's hard. So our concern is to always be alert and ready with solutions at hand for this climate event, and also to foster new technologies and new sustainable manners. So thank you all for being here. Bonini, please. Now you have the responsibility of closing the panel. So panel, once again you let me go last. I wanted to do that, yeah. I know. So I just wanted to say that you are a great communicator, and you have taught me that to communicate is to repeat. And to do that, I'd like us to remember the first question, which is the importance of partnerships. Again, partnership is the new leaderships. In order for us to lead the transformation towards a more sustainable environment, we need to work together. I know it's a bit cliche, but cliches sometimes are important to remind us what's important. The whole thing about you can go faster by yourself, but you could go farther together. That's the journey that we already started, and it's not going to end. We still have decades to go for this transformational process that involves a lot of things, and it's fundamental in the world of transportations to work with customers, to work with insurance providers. That's the only way that we're going to be able to accelerate a process that we're already behind. So I'm always very happy to see the level of engagement that we have from different sectors. And the more engaged we are, the farther we can go and get to where we want to, which is at the total decarbonization of the transportation system. Thank you so much, Kayla. Thank you, Ivani, Andrea. I hope you all enjoyed. We got so many nice messages. And I want to add something else that Andrea told me yesterday. We have a lot of discussion. It's important now to make it all happen. So let's do it together. Thank you, all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So now we move towards the closing remarks of this afternoon. So I'd like to invite to the stage for his final remarks, Igor Calvé, President of Anfavia. Igor, please. Good afternoon, everyone. I see people already leaving. Right, Diogo? So I'll be as brief as possible. I just want to use this moment to thank all of you, to CNseg's team that received us here this afternoon, to have very refreshing discussions. They weren't as heated as the ones I have at the Blue Zone. Those here were very nice and refreshing. And with that, I'll also like to leave here the special thanks for the entire sector. Hopefully, the discussions we had, Diogo, that was good because it's important for us to build bridges up between the sectors. These sectors are big enough to walk together. And institutionally, we don't do that. But we have been trying to do that for some months now. So I'd like to thank you for receiving us here at the House of Insurance at Casa do Seguro. Hopefully, in the upcoming months, in the next COPs, we continue to the partnerships. But as you was said, not only with debates and ideas, but actually with actions that showcase it. And we have a cocktail after as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Igor. Now, Diogo Oliveira, President of CNseg. Guys, since I'm the last one here, then basically separates you from the cocktail, I'll be even briefer, even faster here. So I'd like to thank all the panelists that brought so many important contributions. And I'll also like to repeat what was said before, the importance of partnerships. We have been actively seeking that. Anfava is an excellent partner, very committed. We have assembled and creating this day here for discussions and presentations that was relating to what was going on in the automobile sector. And that was only possible through the partnership of Anfavia and Igor and his team's full support. Where's Mauro, by the way? Mauro didn't help at all, by the way. I'm just joking, of course. Mauro, you were a very dear friend of ours, and he is here as well. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank you all and say this. We believe in cooperation. We need to work together. It's an immense challenge to change the entire production system of a society as global as Brazil. There's no other ways to do that. We cannot do this by ourselves. We have a huge challenge in terms of automobiles inside the insurance world. How are we going to insure electric cars, hybrid flex cars, and all of that? How does that vehicle behaves in the future? How easy it is to repair it, to recycle? It's a huge challenge for the insurance industry. And we are dealing with that. How do we recover vehicles? What do we do with them? Insurance companies recover almost 200,000 cars every year that we recollect. So you see, we have a lot of challenges, and we need to do and work on that together. We need to build partnerships, exchange expertise, and truly do something objectively, which is what I've been enjoying the most about this COP in Belém. I've been seeing a lot of actions being proposed by companies. The subject of sustainability now is finally part of the business strategies of many different sectors. Companies and insurance sectors couldn't be any different. So thank you all. Let's enjoy our cocktail. And the beer is on Igor today. Okay? So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'd also like to thank for the Empowers, Allianz, AXA, BB Seguros, Bradesco, Caixa Seguridade, Mafre, March McLennan, Porto, Prudential, and Tokyo Marine. I would like to remind you that all the presentations are available in our YouTube channel. I invite you to join us for the cocktail. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow.